You're watching In Focus, and I am Aditi Prasad. There is no end to the concerns about the privacy policies of WhatsApp, which have been recently introduced and talked about. Amidst all these concerns, the social media app earlier this week clarified that the policy changes really mean nothing for the personal chats that you're having with your friends and your family, but instead it focuses more on the business chats that you would be having and those could be accessed by Facebook and could be used for marketing purposes. I'm joined by Apar Gupta of Internet Freedom Foundation.
Hi,
Why
hi.
should users in India be worried about this the new privacy rules of WhatsApp, so to speak?
So I would say that the first thing which users have noticed when these changes have been announced is when they enter into WhatsApp and click on their phone, they just have one option there, which is I agree. So they don't have an option which was there earlier to actually disagree with whatever changes are being made. Second, what are these changes? These changes, to a large extent, are about data sharing practices, which will now start between WhatsApp and Facebook, in which people don't have any option to actually say no. So, all the data which is being gathered by WhatsApp will be now shared with Facebook, and Facebook already has a tremendous amount of data and is tracking you at all points in time because every second web page, even if you don't have a Facebook account, has a Facebook widget within it. So your entire activity across the internet, arguably, is today being collected and analyzed by Facebook group of companies, which include not only WhatsApp, but also the fast growing social media platform, especially very popular with people who are within the millennial and Gen Z crowd and age groups, which is called Instagram. Third, what is the information which is being collected now by WhatsApp? WhatsApp is end to end protected. End to end encryption essentially is protection for your messages while they are in transmission, so nobody else can read them. However, when they are delivered to your device or are backed up, then a service provider has the potential opportunity of actually getting that entire trove of messages. So if you back it up to, let's say, a Google Drive or an iCloud Drive, depending on whether your smartphone is an Android smartphone or it is a smartphone which is with the Apple ecosystem, it's an iPhone, okay? They get to know it. And this information is not ordinarily there with WhatsApp and it is not using it. So end-to-end encryption means essentially that your message data, which is the content of the message, what you're writing, what you're chatting about, is not there with WhatsApp, but it does have logs of who you're talking to, how much you're talking to, when you're talking to, which places you're visiting, because connection data is also there, your basic sign up details, which means your phone number, which is linked to your WhatsApp account, your display picture, your name, also any links you click on it, all the Wi-Fi hotspots you connect, and the cell tower locations. And arguably, this is a very rich source of information which will now be shared with Facebook.
What about their clarification? Earlier this week, when they are differentiating between messages with family or friends and messages with business, and that they're saying that the new privacy policy pertains to the latter alone and not to the former. So, is that some sort of a stepping back by WhatsApp after the furor? Do you think?
Not at all. I think there's a great degree of confusion which persists also because privacy policies are the legal document which are governing the relationship essentially between a WhatsApp user and WhatsApp. Number one, it's not the press release, it's not the frequently asked questions post which WhatsApp has done. It's the legal boilerplate which even lawyers have a very tough time in deciphering. And that legal boilerplate, which is your agreement with WhatsApp, has not changed. Now, secondly, the changes in this recent version of the WhatsApp policy are actually contrary to its promises which were made when the service was launched in 2009 and even at the time of its acquisition in 2014. This is important to
Yes.
consider because when a service provider breaks a central promise made to its user, there's a degree of lack of trust which develops over a period of time. So, what we're also seeing is that when in 2014, when Facebook acquires WhatsApp and WhatsApp says that privacy is in our DNA, nothing will change, we will never share or sell your data to any person. And if this acquisition meant we had to change our way of working, if we had to lose our independence and autonomy, we would have not gone through with it. However, in 2016, it changes its privacy policy at that point in time, giving an option to say no, that our data will not be shared with Facebook. And today, that option is no longer there. You are sharing the information with Facebook, irrespective of your choice, which is non existent. Finally, your question also was towards how is there a distinction between conversations I have with friends and family and conversations I have with businesses, where today WhatsApp is also permitting businesses to firstly have conversations with people which may be arguably not protected by encryption, but even if protected by encryption, are stored with Facebook. So, as I
Yeah.
explained in the first answer, the minute the backup is done, it's delivered to your phone, which is end to end encrypted. Even if your conversation with the business is end to end encrypted, the business receives it as an equal participant to that conversation and is able to back it up. They are further being provided the functionality of integrating that with Facebook's advertising features, thereby using your personal data, which is a conversation between you and a business, towards analysis, which can be then be used for serving you advertisements or improving services. Now, one does not know how much data is being stored, how will it be used, and this is giving a huge amount of nervousness to people. So it's a lack of trust compounded by these changes, and also a existence of an alternative, which are other messaging platforms which have reached a level of functionality and maturity where people are shifting in drove and in masses.
You're saying that so WhatsApp is not going to, yes, share your conversations or my conversation, let's say with my friends and family, will not will is still my personal data, and that does not fall under the ambit of these new laws. But that there is a lack of trust that maybe half a 6 months down the line they will just include these also. Is that what you're saying? As of now, it's not, but
No, so the thing is that the conversation itself, like hi, hello, all of that, I'll be reaching there, I'll be coming here. This is what happened in my life. This is what I ate for lunch. All of those conversations are secure by end-to-end encryption. WhatsApp is not reading them, okay, but it knows who you're talking to. Who are the members
right,
of those groups? What are the names of those groups? And
right,
this also gives a tremendous amount of information to a service provider. For instance, when you wake up, where are you traveling on a daily basis? And these patterns become very clear when all of this metadata is put together and analysis is conducted. For instance, a lot of people will get to know about me as Apar Gupta based on who I talk to, how frequently I'm talking to them, and observing those spikes and patterns of communications through different points of day stretching over weeks and months. They'll also get to know which type of articles I read to, because every time we click on a link within WhatsApp and it takes us to a web browser within our smartphone to resolve it, or to a application provider which may guide us in a way towards a service, or let's just take a map. Okay, people send their live maps on WhatsApp quite often. So if
right,
you click
right.
on that and you are going somewhere, WhatsApp even gets that URL code. Okay, so all of these outlinks which people click. So what I'm indicating is that there is a large amount of information, even with respect to friends and family and the conversations you're having, which is available with WhatsApp, which will be shared with Facebook. And second, there is a good reason not to believe WhatsApp, because it had made these commitments not only in a public
Absolutely.
blog post, but it had also submitted this information as a regulatory requirement to the EU competition authorities, which are also examining when mergers take place or acquisition take place of different companies, and they start combining their data. What is the competitive effect on other businesses like messaging applications and social applications? Like, for instance, if WhatsApp and Facebook comes together, can any other business also get impacted by it in a negative way just because they'll start sharing data? And secondly, what's the impact on users and consumers for these services? So WhatsApp had made a representation to the EU competition authorities that this would not happen. And in
And it's
2016,
happening.
it was
Yeah.
when it did happen, it was fined close to 110 million euros by the EU competition watchdog. It's also been fined in Britain as well as Germany by the data protection authorities. And this is very important for people to consider, because it's an issue of trust. We are having private conversations on WhatsApp. And a private conversation does not only mean that people should not be able to hear you and who you're talking to, but sometimes that they should not even get to know that each time you're talking to somebody, when you're talking to them. So, for instance, just in your emails, will you be comfortable if a person knows who all you're emailing, what are the email addresses, how frequently you're emailing them to them, and now
Yeah, but
multiple.
Google knows that. Somebody else may not, but Google definitely knows
That
that.
is a
And
problem.
that is, yeah, and which
That
is
is
where
a
I come to
problem.
my
That is a problem.
right,
That's a major problem. And now
right.
multiply that by about 100, because people text
Absolutely.
incessantly today. It's a form of human function which equals only breath.
What is the guarantee that tomorrow Signal does not do the exact same thing which WhatsApp does? How do you trust a Signal when, in this day and age, when a WhatsApp can come and promise you one thing when it's launched, change it today?
So, Signal does not collect information which is linked to you. So, there was a great comparison put out by Fortune magazine, I think so, or Wall Street Journal, in which they compared the different kind of services through a graphic in which Signal doesn't gather any information which is linked to you except the sign up process in which you do need a phone number, right? And iMessage, which is the native application for SMS text in your iPhone, gathers even less. And then WhatsApp gathers a larger category of information. And the Facebook Messenger is essentially a data honeypot where everything is gathered.
Yeah.
Now, practically, what I would recommend is that different messengers work differently for people. It depends on everyone's use case. Convenience and the facility to talk is what our people's code needs, and privacy is essentially a safety belt. So you're choosing a car with airbags, safety belts, speedometers, etc. If you're choosing Signal, it may not give you the best mileage, but it gives you all these security features, and it's constantly improving. Okay.
Okay.
Telegram does not have end-to-end encryption for group conversations, and it is not switched on by default for your one-to-one conversations with your friends and family or with even others. It does also not have a very open auditable framework, which causes issues with technologists quite often question what are and how is it collecting how much data. So the independent assessment is not possible for it as is possible for Signal. WhatsApp uses a version of the same end-to-end encryption used by Signal, but everything else except the message text in transmission
Right.
protected by this end-to-end encryption is still gathered by it and now is shared with Facebook after Feb 88th, when the new policy will come into effect. And also It will signify and also allow businesses to gather personal information in text and store it with Facebook's servers for its own marketing or for improvement of the product functionality which is within WhatsApp. Degree of security is evident in Signal because not only are the founders people who are fairly responsible, but also Signal is a application which is housed within a non-profit. So it's a 501c, which is called a non-profit charity registered in the United States. So it doesn't have the same economic incentives of gathering more and more of your data, selling it to businesses, or sharing it with a parent entity, which again principally relies on what is called as surveillance capitalism, which is that they surveil you, collect your data, and then sell it. So it's housed within a charity, thereby having very different incentives, which will be focused towards trust, reliability, user friendliness.
WhatsApp has said very clearly that the same privacy laws are not going to be applicable for users in Europe. In fact, the app says that while in India, of course, we'll have no other option to be sharing our data with Facebook and other group platforms. Is it because Europe has better laws in place?
Yes, that's one reason, and they have also suffered a fine in the past. So yeah, it's not only laws but also enforcement. And the second thing is that, but this is jarring because you saw all those advertisements by WhatsApp saying that they would privacy is in our
Yeah.
DNA. So if privacy is in a company's DNA and it's looking to do the responsible thing, it shouldn't only look towards a legal requirement. It's in fact volunteering a level of commitment by itself through its advertisements, through its public positioning, in terms of setting a user expectation that we go above and beyond the law. In fact, we're here to actually give you the best privacy protection which we can offer. But the harsh reality, and this is somewhat unfortunate, is that it's offering very different terms to users in Europe, where they can reject this data sharing, while in India, no such option exists. So one is left asking WhatsApp, Facebook, as to why is it saying repeatedly that privacy is in its DNA. It should quite clearly say that we do the minimum as required by us, and we go by our own business interests in providing a messaging service which is very popular. I think that would be more accurate to what it's doing at present.
What should the Indian government be doing now that uh, you know WhatsApp and Facebook have collectively decided that they're going to bulldoze this on us?
I think a lot of things can be done. The Competition Commission can examine whether this kind of data sharing will have anti-competitive effects. There can also be a greater amount of clarity which can be sought by the Ministry of Electronics and IT. There's a pending litigation in the Supreme Court in which the Internet Freedom Foundation, which is where I work, is also contesting the prior changes to the WhatsApp privacy policy, but also with respect to WhatsApp's much more wider data sharing practices with Facebook, which would impact user privacy. So I would say that several things can be done. Independent on this, we need a data protection law. India does not have a comprehensive data protection law. It should
There was a bill. There was a bill, if I recall, in which was introduced by the government, the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2019. But I think right now it's pending with the Joint Parliamentary Committee, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, so the Joint Parliamentary Committee headed by Shri Meenakshi Lekhi ji has, I think, done the clause by clause analysis, as was posted on a Twitter timeline. We expect in the budget session the bill may be transmitted from the Joint Parliamentary Committee to Parliament, and then maybe tabled by the Ministry of the Honorable Minister for Electronics and IT, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, in Parliament again. And that may give us another opportunity of having an independent authority which can enforce data protection in the interest of millions of Indians. However, just on a practical aspect, usually a new regulatory body takes some time to get operationalized and grow in its own institutional culture of
Right.
enforcement and providing remedy. So, in terms of an immediate remedy, I don't see that as as the body which will do it, because the law is already not in place. The body is not being created. There's no allocation of land. There's no appointment of officers. So all of that will take time. Leave aside, it's starting a process in which it can then examine what's happening right now, right here. Finally, I urge people, it's also having a large impact, is to examine privacy friendly options which can give them the same comfort of having a private and a secure conversation, by examining whether platforms such as Signal work well for them. Secondly, they can keep abreast, given that this is now a wide popular conversation and people are really recognizing the value of their data, to also keep abreast with what happens in the larger sector, what is called as digital rights,